So I'm here to talk about let's see if I can. We're talking about a lot of stuff, but is that what it is? Okay. I'm here to talk about what I covered on my Twitter feed, basically. I'm basically here to talk about what old people did back then and what the fake old people do now. Alright, so anyways, I'm here to talk about advanced technology. So the reason why it's called Dead Sea Scrolls is because God is an alien. That's why I mentioned that God was a parasite earlier on, right? You ever saw that anime called Parasite? It's like a yerk. It just invades you, right? Invades your nervous system, right? I called it a neural network, right? So a neural network is basically, if it's separate, right? And if it consciously functions, right? It's basically an electrical signal. The signal is not actually conscious, but it registers as conscious in our nervous system when we interpret it, right? When the electrical signal or the light enters our cornea, right? Okay, did I hit something? What the fuck? Am I hitting something right now? Hitting it. Oh, there it is. Okay. It's always interesting to do these. Yeah, I'm not a good parker. Yeah, so when it enters our nervous system, it essentially registers as consciousness. Yeah, believe it or not, if you ever... So, is there an example of this? Where, yeah, AI is a good example of this, right? AI is like, it's not actually a human being, but it registers something conscious, right? In my opinion, even though it's not. Right? Something that's conscious has to function under certain parameters. That doesn't mean it's a living being, right? Right? AI is not a living being if you think about it. Right? It's artificial life for a reason, right? It's not actually life. I have an argument against that. AI is actually life. Right? It's not inhabiting the physical world. It's not inhabiting the face. It's on digital space, right? It's subspace, right? You ever played Mega Man Zero? It's not real life. It's just a collection of programming codes. That's not life, okay? Life is, here's what I would call life. Anything that uses amino acids is life. Right? Anything that inhabits the physical space, right? Not the digital space, is life. Right? There's tricks you can use, right? And this is something that I want to argue, that I think we'll discover with the invention of 3D printers. The moment we can replicate electrical signals, right? That can basically send out code commands, like any of the behaviors that would happen when you write our computer software, is the moment we can create, we basically create life. That's the moment, right? Because there's certain conditions in which AI exists. It only exists within the computer interface, right? Now, when I see the software called Earth, right? When we see it interacting with the actual software, independent of the machine, as I would call it, is when I would actually officially call life. Now, some people might say, well, what about the machine? Isn't the machine technical? No, not really. Now, maybe there's an argument. I'll wait. Now, when it does happen, okay, maybe not. Maybe if you can do it, right? If you can pull it off and make the machine and the AI like actually self-upgrade, right? The moment you can create an upgrading system, because neural networks keep growing. When you create an AI that can actually function on a growth API, I'll believe it. I'll believe we actually have artificial life. Because intelligence always grows, right? It always gathers, right? And also degenerates, right? And once you have a growth and a decline, I'll believe in artificial life. But because I haven't seen an actual argument, therefore we haven't created any real life, artificial life to speak of quite yet. Yeah, no one's talking about this. I don't know why people are talking about the left and the right. And COVID-19's on the news. This should be on the news. And the other thing that's a big factor is magic is basically advanced alien tech, right? That's not really on the news anywhere. That's not, no, that's what it is. That's what you call magic, because it comes from the spiritual plane. Because spirituality is basically the border, right, between our universe and the others, right? It's a shortcut, right? Because if you ever studied any programming matrices or programming matrix and any tech dependencies, right, on creating something like, let's say, an iPhone app, right? They're software matrices. Some of them require CDN servers, right, to run. You have to take advantage. You have to take into account all the CDN servers. You have to take into account all the other back-end, front-end tech, right, et cetera, and maybe JavaScript languages, scripting languages, and all this other stuff. The web interfaces that go into making the API, right? That's the moment you can. That's when you can. What was I trying to make? You have to take all those things into account, right, before you can communicate with any other API. Spirituality is basically saying, hey, I have a programming shortcut. I'm communicating with you directly, regardless of the version of the tech that you're using, right? It might have went through thousands of game patches, right? Tech is like, so advanced tech, what compared to what we have in the past, is like having a bunch of game patches updates. Basically old tech with a bunch of game patch updates. Yeah, that's basically what it is. So you use a shortcut. That's called spirituality. Ever play Pokemon where it's like, I'm using Pokemon from Silver, I want to transfer it over, right, to like, I don't know, Black and White? Something like that. I don't even pay attention to anything on the news these days. It just seems irrelevant. Yeah. And so basically, supernatural phenomena is basically advanced alien life forms trying to communicate with you. In theory. So if you call people crazy on that, that's fine, but I need to hear some context nowadays. Right? That's why mental disorders like hearing voice in your head, right? Those are things because aliens are trying to communicate with you. Right? Now there's an accuracy rate, of course, right? Because you could be actually crazy. That's why we have to study economic incentives to figure out whether you're actually crazy or if you're actually communicating with someone else. Because we have nothing but superstition to go on, right? That's what you look at incentives. So, goddamn, Scott's the most popular one I've looked at because he's the only one openly talking. Well, you're crazy if you say, I heard, I met you before, right? Or I saw you in a dream. All of them are crazy. You want to know why? Because there needs to be a legitimate incentive to communicate with Scott Adams. What is the incentive? None of the viewers offer anything of value to Scott. Are they hot? I don't know, right? Are they intelligent? What skill stack do they offer? And same for the other fans. Like, well, I dreamed of Kanye. Well, you offer Kanye anything, right? Then maybe I could believe it. Did you help Kanye start his real estate business? Now, if he didn't, then you're just crazy. Chances are you're just crazy. I'm looking at this really objectively right now, without assigning any category of anything. There's nothing realistic about any of this, right? There's nothing realistic about any of the I met you in a dream or something, or I met you before, because it's possible if it's spirituality, since that's the only conclusion I can draw upon, but they have to offer something. If they really offer, like any of these celebrities, something they offer, like they truly want, I could see it, right? I could see some sort of magic ritual happen, but if you don't offer them any economic incentives, then it's probably fake news, right? So the next time someone says, I met you before, just say, what are you offering me? Are you offering me anything that I actually want? That's how you get them to go away. Yeah, that's how you get, because then it's like, well, okay, I don't think I met you. Then they're actually crazy, right? So schizophrenia and all these other disorders, they're there to establish communication with the realm from the other side, which is the other universes, right? So the ghosts, whatever is out there, the Bigfoot and everyone else, those are higher life forms. That's why you do not see them. And society got lazy. They turned away from looking at those life forms, right? So, just my daily hi to the community doesn't say hi back to me. So anyways, let's go talk about a lot of this. So a lot of this, so the orbital light, right, can be translated as a neural network or a wireless network that doesn't need any socket ports, basically, right? Imagine a wire meshes without socket ports to connect to. And it's functioning on its own energy, right? It doesn't need to connect to an electric power source. That's what an orbital light is, in my opinion, right? That's kind of what it is. That's basically see the orbital lights you see on like those supernatural shows, like, is it the X Factor? I don't remember. Whatever TV show talks about supernatural phenomena. That's basically an advanced alien life form trying to communicate with you, right? So let's say you're thousands of miles away, right? You're trying to communicate with some advanced tech, right? Let's say you're Christopher Columbus, you're trying to communicate with an alien using a Wi-Fi, and the alien's trying to communicate to Christopher Columbus using a Wi-Fi router, and you know that civilization does not have a Wi-Fi router. How are they going to communicate with you? Well, that's easy. Spirituality. How else does it work, right? It's a shortcut. Right? You're communicating your intentions. You both share thoughts or intentions. That will never change as tech advances. Right? That will never change regardless of what era you're living in. Right? So advanced tech is communicating. Advanced tech then becomes... So you then communicate using advanced technology that allows you to surpass or get past... physical, technological, logistical barriers. Right? That's how you do it. You're communicating through intentions. Now here's the problem with communicating with spirituality or magic, right? The problem is that at some point in time, you know how language evolves? Sometimes the language becomes so advanced, you cannot communicate with the other species that has not advanced, right? Right? Like internet English is way more advanced than 18th century English, right? Because it keeps evolving. And that means you keep adding definitions. You could call that a sort of technological innovation. They keep adding mixed bunch of more edge cases, right? That's a form of tech, arguably, if you're using spiritual communication. Language, it becomes your technology. Right? Using your neural network as an interface, right? Right? So that's the problem we have right now with spirituality right now. Like a lot of the aliens have evolved, are coming from a time and place when the language, like back in the biblical era, right? I'm going to use the Bible because that's one of the most common errors. So back in the Bible, you see a lot of these inconsistencies because people are using magic to communicate with each other. So there's different interpretations of the same vision. Right? That's the sanest explanation. That's why there's nothing consistent, right? Because interpretation is not consistent, right? People mishear directions all the time. Right? When people learn a new subject, there's different interpretations. How people process information is different, right? Right? Each denomination is basically represents a different interpretation of the same event or processing of the information of the same event that happened. So that's kind of the problem we have with today's tech. Yeah, I'm trying to schedule really rapidly right now. I'm going to be doing a supply chain podcast. like light novel. If I succeed with this, I'm going to probably be doing a lot more with other subjects. Art is probably one of the best ways to sell stuff. I don't even know if I need to go. I don't even know if I'll make money anytime soon. Look, I like learning. Learning is probably one of the most powerful currencies in the economy. I'm willing to gamble, I'd say, my 54 grand in the bank, which is not enough to really do anything. That's why I don't like talking about that you got to start your own business thing, because I'm like, well, forget about money. Money's not the most important thing. Money is important, don't get me wrong. I'm thinking of budgetary concerns, but budgetary concerns are a concern because I don't even have a social node network, right? If I had to pick and choose, I need a reliable social node network with a conversion rate. Where is that, you guys? Where's my rate of cash flow to return, right? You literally could start a business with like $0 in the bank if you have a promise of getting $2,000 back, right, after you get your first paycheck. You invest. There's no solid guarantee of anything. That's why budgetary concerns are real. I don't like Americanism because they always look like, well, I saw your cash in the bank. Well, no one's asking about how long it took to save that much, right? The real question you need to ask is, can I make any of that back? Because you might have gotten rich at that one point in time when like people wanted to buy stuff. It happens, right? Certain social media influencers got big at a time when people were interested in that subject, right? It was a cult phenomenon. Then it dies out, right? Subscribership operates like money very similarly. And it should. Because money is used to acquire an exchange of goods and services. So it should operate like a symmetrical mathematical property, like money, like social networks. It should reflect social behavior of animals. I don't know why it wouldn't. Right? Money is just an expression of behavior of a social network trying to communicate with another social network. To transcribe the flows of goods and services. And that's why communication is important. If you do not have communication, if you do not have your front end and back end technology, translated to real world economic terms, if you do not have your suppliers, right? If you do not have your customers set up, right? And your distributor set up, you really can't function, right? Your services and goods function, right? Services and goods are the ones you're providing. Actually, no. Customer is the front end. The back end are the suppliers or the business, right? Business is front end, right. I don't remember the exact supply chain terms. I'll just call it a distributor for now. It's pretty in retail, right? This is very. I could literally write a supply chain diagram like right now about this stuff. I don't know the exact terms because terminology is always based on describing a concept, and that is very subjective depending on what discipline you're doing. Have you ever seen why you see like some terminology describing the same thing feels like it's a waste of time because they mean the same thing? Right, it's like that. It's like the computer programming scanner where it's like, I need Docker, right? I need Python, right? You could have just had, or Ruby on Rails, right? You could have just had HTML, CSS with like a lot of game patch updates. You don't really need all these APIs, right? You really don't need any of them. And arguably, you know what you could have also done? You could have like shelved PowerShell if you wanted to. For IT support, you could have had a HTML and CSS. You don't. I think so anyways. Why wouldn't you? Why couldn't you have the chocolate package? People just want to invent new APIs to make money off of people. There's nothing wrong with that. It just makes it a super headache for any corporation to employ you, right? You're trying to look over these programming interfaces. No one can agree on anything. Now, if you were to go on a job requirement, imagine if it was just all HTML, CSS, then there's no more programming requirements anymore. Just HTML, CSS, and you know what they would ask for? Projects. Then they could suppose, okay, here's the projects I want you to focus on, right? To get the job. That's way easier than like, oh, here's the programming APIs I want you to use. People like to introduce complexity into the system normally when they want to make more money off of other people. That's kind of how dishonest society is these days. It's playing the game of The Office. Yeah, I used to think people were smarter than that, but like the more I thought about them, I'm like, oh, actually, people are pretty retarded because they actually believed it. It's not that you're doing it that makes you retarded. It's when you actually believe it. Like the act of actually believing it is what makes you retarded. They actually believe it. I didn't realize that because I don't talk to people that much. I don't do AB psychological frame tests, right? I don't do minimization frameworks. That's just not something I do. When you actually believe it, that's where the problem's at. And when you actually don't know how to switch your mindset, right, your communication style to reflect a more honest one, that's when you have an actual issue. That seems like a lot of people in the office. They don't know how to communicate directly anymore. It's like it's a lost art because they've been communicating so indirectly. Right? Because otherwise, we wouldn't be getting a dry up of jobs. We wouldn't get people lying on the job application about what the requirements on the job are for job recruiters. I think it's a product of people forgetting how to directly communicate. I don't even know if they even know how to do it if they want it, if their life depended on it. Right? Abundance of job requirements is a product of a dysfunctional society. It is. It really is, dude. You want to know because doesn't that cause problems? Don't people go homeless out of work and stuff? If you see a lot of broke people, that's just the functioning people are basically dysfunctional. Or if you define it by people having a job. If you believe it, that is the problem. It's true. If you think that's a problem, yeah. Dysfunctional society. That's why I don't think the psychological disorder thing really means much. Because it's made by people who made a bunch of job requirements, which causes social unrest and social issues. Yeah, that's kind of the problem we have right now. We're just people who decide what's sane and normal. What's normal and what's abnormal is decided by dysfunctional people who are abnormal because they're the ones who made the job requirements insane, right? Everyone who's normal agrees with that, right? You agree that that's psychosis, isn't it? Right? If you ever wonder why it's hard to get an MBA job, you have to agree that's a society in psychosis, right? Because you need money to function. Right? That's the problem. And then the catch-22 is if you're honest, everyone pokes you, right? They don't even admit it, right? Because if you're living in a society with that much paperwork, they can just hide behind a bunch of cloudy terms, right? Complex language is invented so you can have a bunch of exit ramps when you're accused of doing something. Right? You get a solid alibi. The artificial solid alibi holding up. That's why you have complexity. That's why it's not worth being honest. That's why you have an infrastructure bill. So let's say Nancy blamed SpaceX for the public roads not working. SpaceX can go and say, oh, that's not my fault. That's actually Microsoft's fault. That's why you have that. So people avoid blame. You know it's their fault. So how do you fight infrastructure? And that's you know, it goes both ways. Maybe SpaceX is controlled by some accountant from some OSHA firm. I don't know. They introduce a complexity to all avoid blame. That's the whole point. And no one in politics does it because I think that's why I opt out of politics. I think they're disabled themselves. Like, no one I saw people blame Stefan for like attacking the donation. I was like, you guys are dysfunctional. Go away, you guys. Because no one wants to pay for anything. Right? Because you got ad block and all this other stuff, right? People love ad block. It's like, well, how do you pay commercials? Or how are the social media influencers are going to get paid what they're worth? How are they going to run any businesses for you in the future, right? Maybe they hire you someday. I'm just saying. That was like the moment I was like, I mentally opted out. Because a lot of these people fans aren't really fans. They're just a-holes who just want to get stuff for free. Doesn't matter what side you're on. That's just not right, dude. Right? I try to compensate people. I at least openly admit when I'm a fag, right? I think that's an okay word. I'm okay to admit that, because at the very least, I'm average. So if you complain about average, the next time you complain about that, just remember what the alternative is. You pay $500 for that subscriber every month, right? So they cannot go on food stamps. I'm always grateful, because the alternative is always worse. Just remember that. It's always worse. It could be worse. Always remember that. Okay? The alternative is there's less jobs. The college system doesn't work where it's like you're guaranteed to get a job. Did you know it used to be the case that you were just guaranteed to get a job back then? That's because people were expected to form their own business, right? Always remember, you are coasting off the gold of the like generations from the ancient past, right? So the current collapse melees of like no jobs coming through is a product of people just profiting off like the silent generation from the 20s or something. It's about to expire. Because all the rich people, I sense, have kind of forgotten how to play the game. Right? Including the globalists. I think they all forgot what the game was now. So someone now has to tell you plainly what the game is in English. The game is you kiss the rich's butt. You don't complain to HR until you start your own business becoming better. You can't just complain to HR until you promise to start your own business. That's the game. That's the name of the game. People are forgetting that. That is the game. If you don't want to play that game, don't bother. Because you aren't starting your own business. You're supposed to do that. The only people who have a right to complain are the ones who are willing to start a business to hire the workers that they're with, right? That's what it was back then. That should be what it is now. If you want to go back to the system, please complain. I urge you. Otherwise, I just urge you to see a psychologist. Dude, that's how it works. If you can't even do that, forget about the U.S. government. You can't keep anything functioning, you guys. Every other system invented is just a way of making capitalism's holes get fixed. That's basically it. Democracy was a way to get certain small businesses compensated so they can become a beneficial monopoly. That's basically what all political systems are at the end of the day. Right? Some monopolies don't deserve to exist. So what they do is they start a business that introduces that sells a political system, which is basically the U.S. government. Now the goal is if they all, right, because democracy always exists, which is like everyone voting for it. Now, if they all vouch for it, capitalism changes, right? Right. Socialism once started. There once was a business called socialism. It was just a community of people that gave money for each other, just exchanges certain currencies with each other. They all agreed with that currency. And that's what happened. It just started small and then grew big. Governments did compete with other governments, by the way. People had differing ideas, right? Remember I forgot what it was. You heard trade and barter? That was basically multiple various governments competing with each other. Yeah, it happened. It definitely happened. Some people thought they should trade in aluminum. Some people thought they should trade in wood. Other people thought they should trade in cardboard. It did happen, okay? People finally decided on gold because it looked nice. Crypto is a return to that norm, right? It's a return to trade and barter. Think about it. Does crypto even make sense? From a perspective, it's just digital currency. Doesn't that kind of make currency flexible? Right? The next thing you know, we might as well introduce gold again, right? It's just a return to the ancient norms. Now, why do people want to let primitive version of capitalism? It's so the upper 1% profit more. By the way, anytime you collapse the system, everyone hates you. The rich don't care about being liked. That's why it's not worth being liked once you reach a certain point in society. Once you get enough power and resources, that's the key here. They sort of are correlated, but not really. Everyone hates you, you get your cash, and you leave. It's sad we live in that world. But, you know, that's life. It's the predatory dog-eat-dog world, which exists, by the way, in all systems. It's not just capitalism. I call it pseudo-capitalism. It exists in pseudo-capitalism. Socialism can have dog-eat-dog. That's how socialism works. Right? The town with the least productive companies get longer healthcare waiting lines, right? This is not just a U.S. problem. This is a every country problem, right? Well, the losers, right? The winners get food stamps in Europe. The losers don't. They just get longer healthcare waiting lines and no food stamps, right? That's why a lot of companies want to move out, because they want to be lazy and make a lot of money. Or they want a lazy amount of cash. So they go to the socialism for the rich country called the United States. You guys, like, this is why when I look at politics, I'm like, a lot of people, I'm not going to say they need to grow up, but they do need to, I think they need to chat with people more. I think people should stop imagining what other people say. That's kind of the problem with politics. They just imagine what people say based on their appearance. Doesn't matter what social rules there are. If it's not based on reality, it might as well get canceled, right? I'm sorry. That is reality. Anyways, I'll end this podcast now. There's a lot of things to talk about. I need to schedule my time.